Good morning. Welcome to episode 90 of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the beautiful, chilly, and fall-like conditions of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and as well as on Substack. This episode, guys, will be dedicated to the NFL Week 10 recap. Going over some of the games that I watched, some of the key takeaways and things that I definitely thought that I would definitely want to discuss with you guys. Kind of prepper for also for Thursday Night Football, Commanders versus Eagles in Philly. Definitely a must watch. Going over some injury details and news, a little bit of everything, but mostly just recapping the games from Week 10. But nonetheless, hopping into this episode, we're going to start from Thursday Night Football going forward. That Thursday Night Football game, Bengals versus Ravens. Exciting game. Both games actually this year have been pretty damn exciting. I mean, if you've watched both games, if you've had the liberty, and if you haven't, I'm sorry for you, but if you've had the liberty to actually watch both games, both of them were thrilling and exciting to the finish. Tough loss for Cincinnati, nonetheless. Losing by 1 point, and it's kind of been that type of year for them where that defense just been kind of letting them down. But I'll dive into it some more. But it's weird because the Bengals, like I said, lost the game 34-35. But it was weird because they had control early. And they were controlling the clock and they were getting the ball to the backs and the tight ends. And, they were kind of just like dinking and dunking. And they were knifing through the Baltimore defense, which you'll see here. The Baltimore pass defense is atrocious. They're ranked 32nd in the NFL in pass defense. Not great by any. I mean, you're literally dead last. So that's not good at all, especially if you're trying to win the AFC. And the conference that you're in against the quarterbacks that you have to play against, having pass coverage like that is atrocious. So keep that in mind. Nonetheless, Joe Burrow, amazing the whole game. He was 34-56, 428 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He played like the Joe Burrow we expect this time of year when he's healthy or he's most relatively healthy. As long as he's playing like that, the team's got a shot. The rushing attack, though, that's something I definitely got to address. I talked about this when they played the Eagles. It's been something I've highlighted on with them throughout the year. Their rushing attack wasn't there. But it was supplemented with, the quick passing game, short passing game, ball distribution. You got 34 receptions, 428 yards. Jamar Chase is responsible for most of that. So we're going to keep that in mind. But the rushing attack has not been there for Cincinnati this year. You let go of Joe Mixon. And I don't know, maybe you figured, you weren't going to be able to keep him, or you thought maybe you could just get another guy that could plug and play. You had Chase Brown there. And I like Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown's a solid back. He's not at that Joe Mixon level yet. And Joe Mixon not being there is an obvious hole for this team. They're not able to functionally and efficiently run the ball. And it's causing so much of a fucking problem where you're watching them and you're like, if Joe Burrow can't throw for a bunch of yards, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. But Jamar Chase is on another fucking level. I mean, 11 receptions, 264 yards. Longest reception was 70 yards. 3 touchdowns. Pay the man. I mean, like, the rest of the team, I'm talking about wide receivers, running backs, tight ends combined. 164 yards receiving. He had more yards than the rest of his teammates. Hell, he had more yards than the Ravens receivers. Pay this man, Mike Brown. And I know that more than likely it's going to be in the offseason. Don't bullshit yourself. You are not the same franchise or team without this man. Joe Burrow's connection with that man is electric. The way crossing routes. He was killing Baltimore on crossing routes. I mean, it was masterclass in receiving, and his explosion, his pull away speed. It's just once he starts going, you're not catching him. Amazing. And the Bengals defense again is terrible. No sacks, 1 quarterback hit. 99 rushing yards allowed. Not horrible, but not great. And then the Ravens in the second half, they just couldn't be stopped. I mean, like. Cincinnati has just not played well this year. Defensively, they made a gamble. Letting some of these guys go, getting injured at some of the points that they have been injured at, it hasn't really helped them. The running game has not been there, but because the offense can't supplement for the defense is just hemorrhaging. Against teams that can score and spread the ball, it's pretty evident. I mean, you can see in the stats, it's pretty evident. Once they get in the red zone, they're scoring against Cincinnati. It's no question about it. Baltimore, I believe in that second half, they scored on 5 consecutive drives. I mean, how do you beat teams like that? You can't stop them. I loved how Baltimore played in the second half. Like I said, their defense is terrible too. Loved how they played in the second half. Lamar saved his team from a potentially bad loss. And it was a division game, so it wouldn't have been. It wasn't like Baltimore didn't have a win on them already, but it would have been a bad loss. They definitely shouldn't have lost this game. I know they didn't play well to the standard, but definitely, you just speaking in general purposes, if you're playing and you're going into this game knowing that you have a winning record, you're one of the top seeds in the AFC, you're playing a division rival, can you really afford to play like shit in this game? No. So the fact they got out of it was great. But I'll touch on that too further in a second. Lamar Jackson, clearly the MVP this year. 25 of 33 passing, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns. His best asset now is the ability to fake like he's running and throw. We've seen that a couple times this year where he'll start that gallop like he's about to run and then he pulls up and he heaves the ball across mid. He's starting to become unguardable. He is starting to become unguardable. And you go a bit further, the ball distribution, like I said, in the first half, it was a bit of a struggle for him. But in the second half, I loved how they put it together and how Lamar and the offense got it going. 25 receptions between the receivers and backs, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns. So again, great play. Great play by Lamar and them. Zach Taylor. I feel like Zach Taylor, catches a lot of hell. Some of it rightfully so. For some of his decision making and play calling at times when it comes to different aspects of the game, or how he may go about making 2-point conversion decisions, or just game management decisions, period. He's questioned on this frequently. But some of the questionable calls, that aside, the referees continue to miss his face masking call. Face masking calls that were missed during the game, pass interference penalties that were missed during the game. It's becoming a real thing. And it's going to put a team in a predicament where it's going to start costing teams major games, possibly playoff games. And New York, Park Avenue, Fifth Park Avenue, they need to step up. They need to step up a bit more with that replay. Where if you see a referee make a bad fucking call, you need to step in and say, no, that's not the call. That's definitely not it. This was it. You called it wrong. This was the call. Because these guys, there's face masking penalties on Joe Burrow. I mean, really, all honesty, if you call those calls against the Ravens in the Bengals' favor, the Bengals probably win this game. The game was a lot closer than what it should have been. Inconsistency by some of the Bengals plays, honestly, rightfully so. Questionable calls by Zach Taylor. But damn, it don't help when the referees are then missing calls. Where you clearly should have 15 yards and a chance and a threat to score, and you don't have it because they're missing calls. So I'm not going to cry a river for them. They got to play better. They haven't played well all year. This is why they're in the predicament they're in. But make no mistake, you continue to play like dog shit, and you're going to be out of it soon. So it's going to get harder for Cincinnati. I'm not sure how they really rebound. Granted, it was just a division loss. It wasn't the end of the world, but I don't know how you necessarily rebound after losing like that. And, it's kind of one of them situations now where if they don't really win out, they don't have a chance at really making the playoffs. Especially with how tight things are in the AFC. Hell, in their own division. But the referees are too inconsistent with the process. It's just getting ridiculous. And safety Kyle Hamilton, who actually was out for that game, who left that game with an ankle injury. Thank God they just checked yesterday. There was just an ankle sprain, no tears, no ligament damage, anything of that kind. So that definitely helped. Not having him miss any significant time because they need him. He does so much on that defense where if they had him out, Baltimore would definitely be feeling it. Definitely. Going into the next game that I watched from Week 10 would be Buccaneers at 49, or San Francisco, at Tampa. 49ers were able to pull it out 23-20. It was a very exciting game. This game was very low-key underrated in the aspect of it started out slow, sluggish type defensive battle, and then all of a sudden it kind of turned into a fist fight. It went from, it went from a slow-moving game to a slugfest, in the second half, and I loved it. 49ers get McCarthy back, and he was huge. He had 6 receptions, 68 yards, also 13 carries for 39 yards. Used as a decoy early on, but you could tell that he was starting to warm up and knock the rust off and get into a flow of things. Brock Purdy played well, 25 of 36, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns. It didn't look sexy. It didn't look great because he had a fumble. He had a couple plays in there where he's not the guy that, we're not expecting a guy to duplicate everything that they do from the year prior, but he's clearly not playing with the same confidence and looks that he had a year ago. So that being said, but you could tell he was waiting for McCaffrey to warm up, and once McCaffrey got going, that's when everything kind of started flowing. Special teams is a fucking issue for this team. A real fucking issue. I mean, all year for the 49ers, it has cost them games and almost cost them this game. It has to be something that you keep an eye on. I don't care they got Kyle Shanahan. I don't care McCaffrey's back. I don't care if Purdy's there. I know what they're going to do. They're going to get on a little run. They're going to start winning some games. They're going to start putting some blood in people's mouths, probably some bad teams, maybe a good team here and there. And they're going to start feeling good about themselves. And they're going to forget these flaws. Because I'm telling you now, this has 10-7, 11-6, knockout in the second round written all over it. And I got to give Tampa credit. Early on, they kept the San Francisco 49ers defense honest with a lot of the run game and screens, and you can see San Francisco was struggling with it a bit. However, once the 49ers started to catch on to that later in the first half, it was a wrap. I mean, it just kind of, you see like, all right, the ball's not moving. To give you some detail to that, what I mean, Baker was averaging for the game. He averaged 4 yards per pass. So that San Fran pass rush was not allowing him a plethora of time to sit back there and just pick apart guys and just pick spots. That just wasn't going to happen. Going a bit further, even the Niners defense, they had moments where, they looked great and moments of just complexing inconsistency. I mean, just very. Where some screens that they were literally locking up in the first half of the game where they were taking that away, and the second half it was still giving them issues. And then, I don't know. It just looked weird. They just looked very, very much out of sorts at times. Then, of course, you got Debo Samuel and Moody and a long snapper getting into it. I loved it because Debo was right. They did need to lock the fuck in. I mean, let's be honest. Why you out? I mean, you're not healthy. I get it. You just come back off injury. You claim you're healthy enough to kick. Well, make the fucking kicks. You're in a tight game where you could lose this game, and this could really hurt you, not just within the conference, but within the division. Make those fucking kicks. So, he had 3 missed field goals. Atrocious. And like I said, what was even weirder too was the 49ers in the second half, late in the third, going and even into the fourth. They were imploding late in the game with penalties, bad tackling. It was just weird. It was very weird. And Baker, God knows, God bless him, he did his best with the limitations that he had on offense. He was 18 of 29, 116 yards, 1 touchdown. Not great. He had 3 fumbles. Again, we expected. Tampa's rushing attack, though, that's what kept this game a game. 27 carries, 110 yards, 1 touchdown. That's combined. They even tried to distribute the ball to the receivers and tight ends. It was 18 receptions, 116 yards, 1 touchdown. Rashad White was the 1 touchdown running back for the receiving touchdown, but like I said, shout out to Tampa's defense for hanging in there. They really did hang in there with Tampa for as long as they could. But make no mistake, 3 sacks, 7 QB hits, 3 pass deflections. That was a good game. That was a good game for them. But they couldn't stop McCaffrey. And they have too many injuries right now. And they're just one of those teams where they got to get healthy. They got to get healthy. If they can get healthy, maybe they can do something. God was out for the year. But if you can get Mike Evans back, that's going to help with a lot of things. Because 18 of 29 for 116 yards, 4 yards per pass, leaves you a bit, it's a bit apoplectic. Like, it's just, Going into the next game was Steelers versus Commanders. Steelers were able to win this game 28-27. I thought this game was one of the best ones on the docket Sunday. First of all, what a game. It was a physical, old school, tough football game. I felt like it was a lot for both teams. We learned a lot. Pittsburgh utilized the running game early on. I mean, you can see that from the opening drive. They used that early on. Showed some flaws within the Commanders' run defense that I'm definitely going to harp on and touch on. Now, it was a group effort. You had 43 carries for 140 yards. Not great. That means you had to touch the ball a lot. But again, you're talking about between two different backs. Warren had 14 carries, 66 yards. Harris had 21 carries, 53 yards. So that's pretty damn good. And, you had Cordell Patterson getting in the action too as well. But they kept it at it like the whole game. I mean, I'm sitting there watching with my brother and I'm like, yo, they're wearing this defense down. You could just see it. Like, they, even when it wasn't going for anything, run it. Oh, all right, yeah, I know it's 2nd and 7, just run it. And it eventually worked, and the Commanders' defense just basically wore down late, and they weren't really able to sustain with that running game and to sustain with the physicality of what the Pittsburgh Steelers were offering. I thought Russell Wilson was very solid, 14 of 28, 195 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I loved the veteran savvy, the clutch play that he had towards the end of that game. Now, you got to understand something, right? It's a situation where if he gets them to jump off sides, they jump off sides, the game's practically over. They don't jump off sides, you have to either go for it or kick a field goal there, and then it's in Jaden Daniels' hands to get downfield and score a potential game-winning touchdown or, however it may fall out or be. But the savvy that Russell Wilson showed to get that defensive tackle to jump off sides, to get that penalty right then and there, it just shows why he's in there. I mean, they're 10 points per game better with Russell Wilson than they are with Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin clearly made the right decision. And I don't want to misconstrue what I'm saying. I think Pittsburgh's D got tested as well throughout this game. Terry McLaurin had 5 receptions, 113 yards. Ball distribution was there. 17 receptions, 202 yards for the Washington Commanders. But they took the Washington running game completely away. And that's the key to beating Washington. That's really the key to slowing them down on offense. Take the running game away. 22 carries, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that's all from Austin Eckler. You had other running backs to touch the ball. It need not even be mentioned. That's how bad it was. And again, that 22 carries, 60 yards, that was the entire group effort. So, bad. Washington defense also showed again 2 things. One, they definitely need Marshawn Lattimore back as soon as possible. And 2, their defense is suspect. That running game it showed you could run on them. Jaden Daniels was on the bench. And yeah, he may be able to score, but he may not have enough time to score. And because these guys are young, they're not disciplined enough to be in these situations and to win some of these scenarios. So, veteran savvy, veteran win. Crucial to see how Washington played that out. Got to give a lot of props to, how Pittsburgh played that out. Got to give a lot of props to, like I said, how Pittsburgh kind of just lagged and stayed in the game. The whole game I'm watching it. You feeling like, turnovers is happening with, Warren fumbling. You got the Russell interception. You just kind of felt like Washington was going to turn this game up and just pull away. But this is a theme. We've seen them against real good teams, and we'll see against Philadelphia Thursday night. We've seen this team against good teams. When they struggle, they don't win the situational matchups. And that's a part of being a young team. But it's what could possibly cost you down the stretch and into the playoffs. So definitely something to keep in mind. But Jaden Daniels was 17 of 34, 202 yards. He had only ran 3 times, and that was for 5 yards. I think the tape is starting to show, like, when he sees quickly it ain't there, he's gone. And teams are starting to take that away. So I thought that was dope. But Jalen Warren's fumble, I thought would have probably cost Pittsburgh, would have really sabotaged the game and put them in a bad spot. However, again, Pittsburgh lives for games like this. Hang in there, tough, make a stop, get a stop, maybe get a turnover, and next thing you know, boom, they win the game by 3. Boom, they win the game by 1. Stop or a turnover. That's usually how it works for Pittsburgh. And like I said, credit to them. This is definitely the type of game that they play. Washington couldn't convert a first down late, which essentially gave, Pittsburgh the W. I mean, offensively, there was some things shown on that film where if I'm Vic Fangio and I'm the Eagles this week, yeah, my key priority is making sure that he has to throw 34 to 45 times. And it's not because he's not capable of it. It's because if he's backing up the throw a lot and he's not handing that ball off, we already know he's one-dimensional. So, again, Steelers win 28-27, but definitely learned a lot of things about that game, about that team, both teams watching that game. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the Monday Night Football game, which was Dolphins-Rams. This was funny because this was a weird and crazy football game. Bad offense, turnovers, inconsistent football, just real fucking atrocious, like just real bad. This game was deceptive because on the opening drive, the Dolphins get downfield, like boom, score. So you're like, damn, okay, this might be, this might be a track meet today. No. It was literally what it was, a bad football game with bad football teams playing a bad football game. Both teams start throwing interceptions, fumbling issues, bad offensive lines, just clusterfuck. Just pure unadulterated clusterfuck of just mediocrity. The Dolphins were moving the ball, however, drives kept stalling, the Rams couldn't capitalize on it, Rams settling for field goals, Dolphins scoring touchdowns, not looking great doing it. And then something I really want to speak on is a schematic issue. I truly get that the Dolphins defense is a very much attacking defense. You have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I get it that Matt does not have the time because the line is that bad, where he doesn't have necessarily, he can do a 5-step drop consistently without getting touched, or even a 3-step drop without getting touched. Those screens that Sean McVay were calling were horrible. I mean, not only were they not convincing the Miami defense, they knew where the ball was going. You're only throwing to Nacua or Kupp because now that Stafford's got those two guys back, he's not going to continue to do like he did, which was diversify the football to everybody, make sure everybody gets it. It's just one of those things where it's like, well. But again, Stafford does a great job at ball distribution, so maybe you could call some other plays. That was just shitty play calling by McVay. It was kind of just like bailout calls. He didn't really have anything there. Didn't really know if he was willing to take a chance. Just bad. Tyreek Hill finally found the end zone again after dealing with a wrist injury, which wasn't originally called a wrist injury, but then was stated as one. He stated that it happened actually during the time he had that altercation in the beginning of the season, opening day with the police officers in Miami. Kind of weird that it wasn't on the injury report, but nonetheless, he stated that he was dealing with it, but he scored, finally got back in the end zone, so shout out to Reek for that. The Rams couldn't sustain on offense and need to either start adopting a new philosophy or just getting rid of these older players because I don't understand. You're 3 of 12 on third down. Matt Stafford was sacked 4 times. That's bad O-line play. That is piss poor O-line play. And Stafford had to throw to a lot of had to throw a lot due to ineffective, running game. Running game was shitty. Kyron Williams wasn't playing up to the standard. Stafford was 32 of 46, and he had an interception. No shock there. 6 yards per pass. And again, that's due to a weak-ass offensive line. You want a quarterback that's getting the ball out quickly, but make no mistake, if the quarterback's only throwing the ball 4 to 6 yards, that means the offensive line is that bad that he has to just get it out of his hands that quickly. No matter what's developing on the sidelines, just get the ball out of your hands. Just bad. And like I said, ball distribution, speaking to that, was excellent. 32 receptions, 293 yards. Puka Nacua accounted for 9 receptions, 98 yards. Cooper Kupp had 7 receptions, 80 yards. So that was definitely great ball distribution by Stafford and the offense. But the Rams are a bad football team. I mean, I know they play Philadelphia in a couple weeks and anything can happen. I'm not saying they can't beat Philly or they can't beat any of the teams that they got to play. Because, again, it's any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday or Saturday, however it breaks down. But either way, this team is flawed in a lot of areas. They make a lot of turnovers, and they don't create them in a good way. They create a lot of bad turnovers for themselves. I just don't feel like they have enough horses in the stable to make the playoffs this year. I really don't. And as far as the Dolphins are concerned, Dolphins have a lot to do to make the playoffs. However, if they take this one game at a time approach, like Calais Campbell and others had stated, they could definitely make it. Interesting though, their next 4 games, they have the Raiders, Patriots, Packers, Jets. If you can go 3-1 during that stretch, that's fantastic. I don't see them beating Green Bay. I won't lie to you. I can even see them being upset by the Patriots. They could possibly be more likely they'll beat the Raiders and the Jets, but those 2 games in the middle between the Patriots and Packers, I would definitely keep my eye on. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I thank you as always for watching, like, sharing, and subscribing. Like I said, check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as on Substack. Yeah, and quick updates too before I end the show. I spoke on episode 89 about Anthony Richardson being benched and Joe Flacco playing like shit and it only being a matter of time. Well, just announced about 22 minutes ago, Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson will start this week against the Jets and for the rest of the season, according to coach Shane Steichen. What a shot. What a shot. Didn't I tell y'all that Flacco played like dog shit? Didn't I tell y'all that at some point he was going to have to save face and put that boy back in there? Because why? What are you proving by keeping him on the bench the rest of the way? You're not winning any games. Your offense looks flawed. It looks like the quarterbacks aren't doing the job that they're supposed to be doing with it. So essentially, where was this going? Where was it headed? I don't know. But glad to see Anthony Richardson got his job back. Glad to see that whole fiasco and facade is over, and we could put the old Joe Flacco is going to get the Colts to the playoffs shit to bed because he looks like a 40-year-old quarterback who definitely needs to retire. And I'm just going to leave that at that. But anyway, guys, take care as always. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.